Hello, everyone. Welcome to the GLORIO Chat, the best anime podcast on the internet. I hate to be the one to say this, but the spring season is rapidly approaching its end here, which is sad not only because of the rapid, unending passage of time, but also, as we've been saying, it's a really good season.
The one time anime has been good in the past 10 years is rapidly approaching.
I don't. Well,
that might be a little harsh, but
I'd have to consult the texts to.
Yeah, this is one of the strongest seasons we've had in a long time.
Yeah, for sure. It's a little anxiety-inducing, honestly, because like a lot of these shows are kind of closing in on their finales, and like while a lot of them have instilled confidence in me, there's always that feeling in the back of your throat that like can all of these anime stick the landing, you know?
Well, I hate to break it to you, this is probably our last chance to make predictions, so we'll have to get into that. But I think we have to do season preview next episode.
My prediction is at least one show will crash and burn.
I would be happy if only one show does. I'm worried about this.
Well, we can place our bets as we go down the list here, for sure. But before we get into it, let's introduce everybody. I'm Jel. I am joined, as always, by Iro.
I'm still here. I'm not dead yet.
Still with us. I'm joined by G.
What's good, everybody?
And for this episode, we are joined by Zig.
Since I'm not a regular, I don't have a pithy catchphrase.
Oh, you're fairly regular.
I mean, in all fairness... Oh, go ahead.
I'm regular on a longer rotation than you guys.
You know, you're like the Neptune to like our Mercury or Venus. Like, yeah, you make that rotation, but you know it takes a little longer.
It took me a minute to process that, G, but I think I get it now. Yeah.
No, because like if Gel is the Sun, then like Iro is Mercury. I'm like probably Venus.
Oh.
And then, like,
I thought we were doing some Sailor Moon shit.
Oh,
I got confused
no. I was talking about the actual planetary bodies that are called the Sun, Mercury, and Venus.
Oh, I thought you were going for an ancient mythology reference.
Actually,
you people, it's
if we go to our total podcast count, Iro's probably been on more like one or two more podcasts than I have. But
so does it make Iro the sun of the GLORIO?
That's me.
Chat?
You know, Iro, he's always a ray of sunshine in our lives.
All right. Well, we got a lot of anime to talk about.
Boy, do we.
I feel like half of these shows we could spend like an hour talking about. So,
yeah.
Do we just create the Vivy / Odd Taxi spin-off podcast where we just talk about those shows?
Yeah, I feel like Odd Taxi alone could be like.
Oh man.
I mean,
so many theories we could dive
Vivy
into.
and Odd Taxi at least reached the point. At least share the fact that they have both reached the point of violent violence. So.
Oh yeah, yeah, in very different ways, but yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, we do want to do some quick catch up on a couple of things that we haven't been talking about. We'll give them their one quick opportunity here before the season wraps up. But you guys are saying you wanted to mention My Hero Academia, call them out.
Yeah, just want to do a quick call. You know, here's G's call out post of My Hero Academia. So the last week's My Hero Academia episode was a very Bakugo focused episode. To give context, they're sort of having a Class A versus Class B exhibition training exercise where it's like 5 teams from each. So Class A is like where Deku and Bakugo and, you know, the main cast of My Hero Academia comes from, and then so they're like 1A and they have 1B, which is like the other, like their counterpart class, and so they're having these like 5v5. You know, it's like a miniature tournament arc, right? Yeah. And like the first 2 matches are like, or no, even the first 3 matches are all like legitimately pretty fun because like. The
get
B
to
class,
see some people who you don't see often,
right? And people get to show off like their powers because, you know, they're in a more constrained, focused environment. A lot of the Class B like kids have like much like weirder, esoteric like JoJo stand adjacent powers that are like in a lot of ways much more creative and interesting than Class 1As, because Class 1A is kind of your Justice League, right? You got your bruisers, your people who can, you know,
right,
your speedsters, that sort of stuff. So B is like, you know, you have guys who can like
Turn the ground to mud,
yeah, soften any material into a mud-like, consistency, or a girl who can like split herself up like Buggy the Clown style, stuff like that. And so the first 3 matches, like, legitimately pretty fun, right? There's kind of a good back and forth between the two, like, getting to show off all the kids' powers and kind of what they've learned along the way. It's fun, good-natured stuff. Like, it's fun, entertaining. Just watching these kids get to, put their best out there. And then the Bakugo episode happens, where Bakugo basically just, I don't even want to give him, that much airtime. Just long story short, he basically single-handedly wipes out the entire opponent team. It is like so dominate. It is so like just one-sided. Like everybody makes it extremely clear. Bakugo is the like sole factor. He single-handedly 1v5 just obliterates the other team. And then everybody looks directly into the camera and says, "Wow, Bakugo sure has come a long way. He's really become a team player." And I'm not even joking. He's
really changed.
The fuck?
Literally, multiple characters like look directly at the camera and say, "Let me make it clear, even though Bakugo's personality is a little abrasive sometimes, this was one of the greatest displays of teamwork and cooperation I've ever seen in my life." Literally, All Might is like, "Wow, that was like one of the greatest cooperative efforts I've ever seen in my entire career as a hero. Bakugo really has come a long way." And like, like fucking Zoolander here, like Mubatu, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills here. I'm like no, like that's what I feel like I'm being gaslit by My Hero Academia. Like,
right,
like
insisting that Bakugo is totally different now.
Right.
I mean, to be fair, My Hero Academia has been gaslighting us from the beginning into thinking Bakugo is anything other than a complete piece of shit. So
yes, but it's just like it really comes to like a really awful like climax here. Like, again, it's like I'm like no, there was no teamwork there. Like he just like he got all the screen time, and everybody's like no, G, don't you see the subtle ways in which he encourages allies by insulting them? It
by
motivated
refusing
them
to call them by their names.
It motivated them to fight harder. Thus, that was Bakugo's roundabout way of showing his strong leadership skills. And I'm like, no, that's not how that works. And so, like, as usual, Bakugo ruins what was otherwise a pretty enjoyable arc. And
yep,
yeah, fucking My Hero Academia, man. It's
Is it just time to pull the plug?
No, because
or is there still some
there are some very cool ladies on the horizon of My Hero Academia. Very cool, very strong ladies on
the same tier as
strong, powerful women.
Who's the bunny lady?
Yeah, like Mirako. Mirako is about to get a lot of screen time.
When I think of strong, powerful women, I think Bunny Girl.
Well,
hey, those strong legs.
Yeah. No, yeah. I get it.
She could jump good.
I get it. Okay. Well, the other show we wanted to catch up on is Back Arrow. Which
we have
not talked about this season at all.
Because there isn't much to say.
Sticking with it. But did something happen this week? Or...
I'm reliably informed that they did the thing.
Yes.
It took this whole show.
But yes, things are happening in Back Arrow. And like if it weren't for this show being what it is, I would say like there's actually a few like individual moments in the last couple episodes that are quite good.
Yes.
So like a lot of the focus of the recent episodes have been like, so like long story short, the titular Back Arrow has been revealed to be, I mean, he's basically Nia of the Anti-Spirals. Like they reveal, actually he's a tool of the real villains, right? And like his
sent to destroy everything.
Right. Herald of the true villains. And like his powers go out of control. He's like blasting everybody and like disintegrating them. And like it's up to like the rest of the cast to like, snap him out of it, right? And so a lot of the emphasis goes towards Rekka, who in this world are sort of like not China Romance of the Three Kingdoms period, like a lot of top knots and talks of honor and brotherhood. And
I've seen a fair few screenshots scattered about Twitter of the Emperor looking like he's going Super Saiyan on somebody.
The Emperor is very good. Emperor Zetsu is like... He's like Master Asia crossed with Lord Genome. Like, just, like, super badass kung fu, like, social Darwinist man. But, like... he's just a really fun dude to watch, right? Because he's like the one character in this show who clearly is having a great time.
Social Darwinist man is my favorite superhero comic.
Like, well, it's just that he's kind of a shitbag, but also he's a shitbag who's clearly having the time of his life when everybody else is like treating this super seriously. Like, you know, like when you know the evil villains reveal that this is all part of God's plan to destroy their world, Emperor Zetsu's like, oh, capital G God, huh? Maybe, just maybe, this will be a match for my overwhelming physical prowess.
Time to attack and dethrone God.
Yeah, basically. And so a lot of stuff happens. There's a very good line from a character named Bit, who this whole time has kind of been like a
shitty comic relief. Like,
they haven't killed him yet.
No, like, I don't know, like to use I don't know, use like Nakashima writing analogies. I guess he's kind of like an even shittier Attenborough, if you remember that character from Gurren Lagann, like just Bit character on the crew who like, I mean, his name is literally Bit, who just like is just like a shitty like comical coward.
I remember him wanting to die, but
yeah. But he has a great line in the last episode when like they're faced with like this overwhelming power of threats to
like
destroy their world.
Arrow, the core of the group, is yoked to this vengeful god trying to kill everyone, and Bit, they're all trying to decide whether they should even try to fight God.
Yes, and so, you know, everybody's like, do we even stand a chance? And Bit fucking walks up and says the amazing line, after the life I've lived, what's scarier, God or poverty?
Wow.
Might as well fight God. I ain't going back to being poor.
Yeah, it's...
That's pretty...
When Nakashima swings for the fences...
it's pretty wild.
And then in the latest episode, Bit finally reveals that he too can do the like mech transformation that everybody else has. And it is maybe the most beautiful piece of Nakashima logic in this entire show. So, like, Bit reveals that his Brightheit, that's the name of the mech, is the ship itself. So here we go. Time for the ship to transform, right? But, and not only is it transform, but it is a Gatai-style transform, where Bit is basically the Lagan of this universe. He can Gatai with anything else and become a force multiplier for what he is Gatai'd with. And the reason for that is because they explain that Bit is such a shitty layabout waste of space who actively holds everybody back that anybody who's working with him has to try 2 or 3 times harder to compensate for how much of a shithead he is.
That
and
makes
as a
them
result, by Gatai with Bit,
so much more powerful.
You actually go past your original limits because you have to compensate for how much of a fucking waste of space he is.
Wow.
It's really good. It's really like it's like the specific piece of like absurdist Nakashima logic that this show had been desperately missing this whole time. And
well, at least they admit it.
And so yes, for a little bit there, Back Arrow was pretty entertaining.
Yes, and the big dreadnought finally transforms into a mech like we all knew it would from the second it appeared.
Right.
And it got ties with the other dreadnoughts that have shown up. And
oh, I didn't know there were other dreadnoughts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, there are other dreadnoughts. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. They're just there. And then yes, Bit got ties with them.
And yet you still don't seem super enthused about this show.
No, it's
kind of too little too late.
Right.
Yeah. And like it's just that, like, it's because it really is just the presentation. I mean, not just the presentation, but a lot of it is that the presentation is just so, like, bog standard. It's just, like, so sterile despite the, like, patent absurdities that, like, Nakashima is trying to put on screen. Like, even when, like, Bit reveals that the Dreadnought can transform and does the big Gatai and then punches, like, you know, this fucking Shin Megami Tensei looking final boss. It's like the weakest, limpest looking punch in the world. Like
Right.
think of like when like think of like when Gurren Lagann merged into become Arc Gurren Lagann, and then punch that anti-spiral through the fucking like fabric of reality and shattered the dimension that they existed in.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, that was all right.
Gurren Lagann's
there's not
good.
yeah, Gurren Lagann. Yeah, I mean, we want to talk about Gurren Lagann. I'm all here for it. But yeah, it's like there's just none of that like spectacle in Back Arrow.
Right.
Like,
And there's a lot of middle ground between there where Back Arrow could. We're not saying Back Arrow has to be Gurren Lagann, but there's a lot of room to improve.
I mean,
definitely.
I think part of it is also that like the thing that was designed to go against the formula has kind of become a formula, right? That's the way things go. You know, what was once fresh and new is now kind of predictable, and if you're going to do something predictable, you need to do it with a certain amount of pizzazz, or it's just something we've seen before but better, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Still, it's a good job there's no other Super Robot shows this season.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
gonna say
I
if
can't
we want
believe
some
we live-
good, if we want some good Gatai, we'll get into Dynazenon later.
I can't believe we live in a world where I even have enough mecha anime in a season where I could say Back Arrow is the third best or first worst mecha anime of the season. I
mean,
guess.
I assume you're counting Vivy as a mecha anime.
Oh, then I guess we're moving it down to fourth. Actually,
No, I think Godzilla, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Well,
I
speaking
guess
of,
Well, that's Back Arrow. I mean,
we'll have to
it's still
see
going,
where
but-
that goes. But like you said, too little, too late, right?
yeah.
All right. Well, let's get to our regularly scheduled programming. Let's kick things off with Vivy Fluorite Eye's song.
So, can I start by saying something?
Sure, Zig.
Okay.
It's really fucked up to put someone in a museum. Like, just in
Yeah.
general.
We'll get to that, but I think we have another episode we got to touch on.
I know,
before we
but
get to that
I just
part,
felt
but
like I needed to put that right up front in the...
yes.
Like,
Well, I actually think
yeah.
that museum bit actually helped solidify for me something that I was trying to figure out about the prior episode.
Okay. Well, let's get into the first episode, which was the end of the Diva arc, I guess we could say.
Yeah.
We get which culminates in this crazy final showdown between Antonio and Matsumoto. And,
Antonio and Matsumoto.
Yes.
and what's the guy's name?
Kakutani.
Yes, and Diva, not Vivi yet, Diva.
Diva 2.
Yes, and it's pretty wild as always.
Some pretty wild choreography in this one.
The thing I will say is that I think this is a good example of like really clever fight choreography and directing trumping like pure technical quality of animation, because like on a technical level it's fine but not amazing, but it's really well directed and really well cut and shot, and that makes it super exciting.
Yeah, like it definitely reminds me of like some of like Ryo Timo's work, which is kind of famous for being like hampered by a lack of budget and time, and so like a lot of his great choreography would instead rely on like very good directing and shot composition. And I think that's really in fact I want to shout out the fight in this episode, because I kind of went back and watched it, and like I think one of the interesting, I don't know if this is intentional, but I think it was a fun, maybe subtle bit of storytelling, is that Diva is on the back foot in basically throughout the entire fight. Like she is like clearly on the defensive and like needs to like work together with Matsumoto to overcome her opponents. And I don't know if that's like meant to be a commentary on that Diva is a pretty outdated model at this point. Like, you know, she is like 50, 60 years old at this point. Like,
Yeah.
I think it might also be a commentary on the fact that, you know, she is doing this for the first time, essentially, as Diva.
Right.
You know,
Right.
she's new to the...
She does still have the combat code.
Yeah, I mean, she has all of that stuff, you know.
Right.
But
I mean, well, let me put it this way: Diva does not have a wrist-mounted cannon in her forearm in the way Kakutani, the fucking AI-hating android, does.
I will say that they've held off on outlandish stuff like that up to this point, so much so that felt like a real escalation.
Right.
Like,
That's what I really liked about it.
Yeah, when he transforms his arm, it's a real oh shit. Like this dude is like a machine. He's a monster.
Right, like, well, not only
real
is he a machine,
serious.
but like unlike every other machine we've met so far, he is a machine like intentionally designed to hurt people. Like all the other androids and sisters we've met up till now are capable of fighting, but like they can always make it constantly clear it's not like necessarily their primary purpose. Whereas Kakatani, as like, so to give context, Kakatani reveals that he hates AI so much he was willing to put himself into a robot body so he could keep hunting AIs.
Yes, you called that one G. We don't have to properly credit you for that.
I mean, it was pretty much the only option, to be fair.
It was either that or digital ghost, right? So
or time travel, but
Well, speaking of time travel, right? That's one of the other interesting reveals of this is that while there might not necessarily be a second Matsumoto running around, that episode reveals that Kakatani somehow received information from the future, right? He is using weaponry that is explicitly not from this era in the form of his logic bullet, which incapacitates Diva, and his Titanfall hacking knife.
But more than the technology, they also gave him knowledge. Like, they gave him knowledge that this thing would happen on this day, and he would be presented with an opportunity, And, and I mean, I think you said this to me, Iro, but like, the only way you can escalate the threat against a time traveler is to introduce another time traveler, right? So this is like the logical end point of the escalating threats that she's been facing, really.
Right. And it ties back to, like, even last time we were talking about Matsumoto starting to get outdated by the technology and all that, but
he almost lost that hack battle,
Almost. I thought it was
also,
cool how he was...
Also,
like,
he might be a person.
What do you mean?
We'll get to that.
We'll get to
the next episode.
That's next episode.
I did like too how he was kind of involved in both fights because he's a computer and can be in more than one place at a time.
Yeah. Also, shout out to that one part where Diva just fucking chucks a Matsumoto cube at Mach 5.
Pretty good. So yeah, that all kind of culminates in basically the death of Diva, right?
Yeah. Well,
as we know her.
40 Diva 2, aka Smug Diva.
Right. So like shout out,
gets erased.
Pour one out for Smug Diva. Yeah, she gets infected by like some kind of logic virus by Kakatani.
And she has her sad disappearing scene in the archives.
Yeah. Yep. But she's going out on top, like she's singing one last time at at the show.
It's pretty well done, I think.
I will say I'm glad they addressed it later because I was a little confused by what Diva and Matsumoto had actually succeeded in because they didn't really prevent Ophelia's suicide. They just turned it into a double suicide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if that's theoretically better for the timeline.
I mean, I think what they said was that they prevented it being a copycat thing, right? Because it was more ambiguous. Really.
Yeah, I don't think they explain why that did that, but they do mention later in the next episode, right? So yeah, let's get into that. I mean, we get our next time skip.
Yeah.
Relatively short, at least initially. Only 5 years.
Initially, only 5 years, but this is, as Zig alluded to, Diva just gets stuck in a museum exhibit.
The line that like, she stopped singing, and so Neoland donated her to the museum. And now they keep her in this fucking cubicle.
And so here's actually where I want to get into what Zig brought up, and actually sort of tie this back to the prior episode. So, Iro and I were kind of working through the prior episode a little bit because, in all fairness, it's a fairly dense episode that maybe could have like benefited from an extra episode to clear some things up. And I think one of those things was kind of like, what is the like core of like Kakatani's like consternation with AIs? And seeing Vivy in the museum kind of helped solidify my understanding of like what that consternation comes from. And it's the like frustrating contradiction of the very patronizing tone in which humanity treats AIs as like people, quote unquote, right? Like, oh, we give them funerals and we treat them like our friends. But also, we air like a fucking snuff film GoPro video of their last moments at their funeral, and we keep them like in not necessarily cages, but we keep them cooped up in museums as if they were like an inanimate object at an exhibit. So like it becomes very obvious that even humanity itself cannot clearly like make up its mind on the personhood of AIs, even if their intentions are seemingly benevolent. And that frustration is what drove Kakatani to kind of wage his war against the AIs, because he thinks that it would be better if the AIs just didn't exist at all, rather than suffer this like infuriating half-life.
I mean, I've seen some people argue that she doesn't mind being there and she wants to be there, and I'm like, bro, who do you think decided that she doesn't mind being there and wants to be there? You know, like,
Right.
Yeah.
you don't get to...
I think it's pretty clear it's meant to be uncomfortable that she's in that position to the audience, right?
Right, which is interesting, because I think the show, I mean, a lot of fiction centered around the development of, you know, living AI is very preoccupied with the concept of the legal status of them, if that makes sense. Whereas I'm not saying that Vivy hasn't been about that, but it has been less of a foreground thing. You know, it's not necessarily about the huge societal changes and sort of the struggle for legal status. That's sort of been relegated to the background as sort of like one of the lesser plots. And so now to have that suddenly be such, and again, it's not that the show is shoving it in our faces, it's just that theme has come to light because of the circumstances, which is good storytelling.
Like, I mean, thinking about it now, like, I mean, again, you know, I'm not like here to like defend Kakatani's actions, but you look at it from his perspective, and it's like they let a dude marry an AI in this world, like, right? Like, they let a dude marry an AI, but also paradoxically like shove them into museum exhibits, like. Right. Like, but you look at a society that acts like that, and why wouldn't you get frustrated that the world seemingly couldn't make up its mind?
Right.
But I think the argument would be people have married all sorts of weird objects. Right?
Hey,
like,
somebody married Hatsune Miku, right?
Yeah, if it's just a thing, who are we to yuck this guy's yum? You know?
Right.
But also we perform funerals for that. I guess that's what I mean, right? It's like it is that infuriating.
I mean, people give their pets funerals.
Right, and I think that's what I mean, right? Is like there is that like
contradiction, hypocrisy between.
If you were a person who was wired like Kakatani, where you wanted a clear, rational like answer to this question, this show, or the humanity in this show, has given you a very unsatisfactory like answer to those questions.
Right, Kakatani is destroying AI because, in a sense, he doesn't believe humanity deserves AI.
Right.
You know, he doesn't believe that he doesn't want humanity to abdicate responsibility in the way that they are doing so, you know, and it's complicated, and it works on, you know, several different levels, and it's not entirely rational, but again, you know, that's kind of how people become obsessed with things in real life. And so I wanted specifically to shout out in this episode, though, some really good writing. I think that, you know, because the basic theme of this episode is that, bereft of her mission, Vivy has to learn how to live for herself. You know, she has to learn how to find herself as an individual. And, you know, this is a very cliched plot line, you know, the robot who suddenly discovers that they're self-aware, you know, and this isn't exactly the same because Vivy has obviously always been self-aware, but I think it's a really clever way that they work all of the plot strands together, you know. So there's her trying to find her music, her tune, there's her realising that she is, you know, an individual separate from her mission, and there's the stuff with the kid who eventually grows up into the Professor Matsumoto and all of that stuff, and it's just really subtly done, really nicely written. It doesn't smack you in the face with it, but it's still really effective in the end, and I just wanted to shout out just how well they integrate those things together.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you there, Zig. I think, like it's a much more, like, you know, the stakes, at least initially in this episode, are much lower, right? It is almost entirely about the interiority of Vivy as a character. And I think that not only is there, like, a lot of great writing, but in the classic Vivy way, they continue to, like, wrap it in with... They wrap it together with, like, some really, like, you know, great presentation choices to sell it. Like, you know, it's a bit of a classic move, but, like, once you realize that the song she is writing is the ED, like, it adds a really fun context to that, you know? And, like, there's a really interesting aspect of, like, she's writing a song, or she's writing a piece of music, but she's not singing, or at least not yet, She has not created lyrics for it yet, right? Like, despite her initial, like,
her directive being to sing. Yeah.
To sing, she is explicitly not singing here. She is composing. And, you know, in a weird ways, right, it is once again, like, the cool way in which the AIs in this setting, like, slightly twist their, like, prime directives to, like, better suit themselves, right? To better suit their own personal expression of their being. And it continues to be a really neat way to explore the kind of burgeoning personhood of the AIs in this show.
And I think as well, it's an illustration of how Vivy has continued to go one step beyond the standard cliches, because the standard cliche here is, oh, a machine discovers that they're a person after all. But, you know, the audience and the writers, you know, it's been fairly obvious that Vivy has been a person all along. You know, we don't have any doubt about that. So what's next? You know, well, like a real person, like a child, you know, once you exist, you then have to decide why you exist, and that's the next step in her evolution as a character, you know, and as a person, and that's, you know, you're going one layer deeper than a lot of fiction might.
Yeah, and I think you know it's, and I think despite the relative like focus of the episode, I do think they also do a pretty good job of like slowly building up like towards the conclusion of this episode.
Right.
Yeah.
Where Matsumoto, you know, visits Vivy like once a year and kind of implies that he has another mission that he's working on, but this time he will not bring Vivy on it, right? Like, he's like, I got a thing I need to figure out. So, like, you know, what does he say? Let's have a race. Let's see if I can fulfill my mission, or you can fulfill your attempt to discover yourself first, right? And right, like, we see 20 more years pass in this episode, right? Like,
yeah.
Of Vivy trying to explore herself, and kind of leads up to yes, the reveal that the boy who saw her at the beginning grows up to become, you know, the Professor Matsumoto. Vivy kind of witnesses him go through his own life, right? Find a family, you know, have a daughter, implied to have lost his wife, right? It's
yeah.
And I think the interesting thing is that I went back to check the episode 1 prologue. The implication seemed to be that whatever is happening at the end of this episode is happening slightly earlier than it did in the original
right,
timeline.
because we've only made it to like 86 or 87 years, right?
The Professor Matsumoto that we see, the last time we see him in this episode, is actually is notably younger than the one we see in the episode 1 prologue. Right. So, very much the question, did Matsumoto and Vivy save the future?
Well,
okay,
so
I'm open to the possibility that just between the time we see Matsumoto and the time Vivy wakes up and the Robot War has begun, that time passed and we are quote unquote caught up rather than starting early.
Right, they do
between the two.
Yeah, they do intentionally leave the period that she has been quote unquote sleeping ambiguous.
From when she actually shuts down.
Yeah,
when she wakes up.
She completes the song and shuts down, and then she wakes up, and we don't know how long it's been.
That's true.
Right, that could have been additional time beyond the 20 years.
Yeah.
Right. So there's that.
Also, yeah, speaking of great presentation, should we all just give a shout out to the AIs singing Vivy's new song as they murder humanity?
How's that for a post ED drop? It's a memorably discordant moment.
Oh, it's so good. Like I keep comparing it, but it feels like a fucking Yoko Taro move. You know what I'm saying? Like fucking evil AI singing a like distorted, fucking creepy version of Vivy's song as they bring about the apocalypse. It's glorious. It's magnificent. I love it.
So I'm gonna throw out some questions here.
Okay.
So obviously where this episode ends is meant to parallel what we see in the first episode, right? With I mean, that's the first time we saw Vivy was when she wakes up in her museum exhibit, right? And she sees everybody getting murdered.
I mean, she doesn't see anybody getting murdered in that episode.
Well, I guess in the first episode, right? But well, okay, we as the audience see everybody getting murdered.
Yes.
Yeah.
So did they explain, or did I miss what Robot Matsumoto's mission was that they were racing with?
He is looking for whoever sent the information back to Kakutane, was what I assumed.
I kind of assumed that his mission was to help Vivy discover her mission, if that makes sense. I kind of assumed that he was implying that the thing he had to do was help her find her way back, and that the person he promised to do the job for was Diva, smug Diva, who now no longer exists. So that's what I got from that, but I think
they don't explicitly say.
I think it is open to interpretation deliberately.
Okay, I'll throw out another thing. So when he tells her, so he tells her that the project is over because after the Ophelia incident, there were no other AI suicides, and he was not projecting that, he
did not have any other he did not have any other pre-programmed nexus points.
Do you think he was telling the truth at that point?
I feel like the standard operating procedure.
He thinks that he's not sure, probably.
I feel like the standard operating procedure for this kind of show is to reveal at the very end that it was all a long con in favour of, a separate, undefined goal. So I think there's still that possibility that Matsumoto is actually, I was attempting to do X, and I achieved this by telling you I was actually trying to do Y. And, I feel like that would be the standard twist in this situation. I hope it's something other than that, obviously.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily implying that, Matsumoto was secretly had bad intentions and was, working the robot apocalypse.
I think if anything... it's likely that it was a greater good thing, that he was secretly preventing the apocalypse by causing the apocalypse or whatever,
I think,
it's difficult to say.
I think the next step from here, and get me on tape on this one, is that we're gonna get after we deal with the AI war for a bit, we're gonna get a sequence we're gonna get a montage of them going back and running the loop multiple times, trying to fix it more.
Yeah,
we'll get a Madoka episode 10 out of this.
Yeah, make that Madoka 10 reference. So, does anybody have any other predictions before we wrap things up on it?
I think that Vivy will get to the mountain base, and it turns out Judgment Day was inevitable all along, and nuclear war begins.
I'm actually
that hot Terminator 3 reference for you kids.
God, I'm actually wondering, I feel like one of the themes that is common in time travel fiction is that time is a river, and you can divert the flow, but you can't really stop it, right?
Right.
You just make a new branch, right?
Yeah, and I want look, if we start to do some crazy time loop shit, I'm all here for it. But I almost wonder, I almost wonder if part of the story will simply be that, I don't know, maybe it's too grim, but maybe it's just you just couldn't stop the AI apocalypse, and all that's left is to try to fix what has been done, right?
Yeah.
All we can do now is move forward in the timeline. It's too late.
I don't think this show is dark enough to go that route, but
maybe, yeah. I mean, I'm literally just spitballing here. I feel like Vivy is one of those shows where, when I said I was anxious about how it's going to stick the landing, I think Vivy has hit some of the highest highs of this season, and as a result, it is maybe also the one that I feel the most anxious about its ability to stick the landing. There's just so many elements in play. It has set up so many great expectations, and I compared this show to It Invaded a few times. I really hope this show has a better ending than It Invaded did.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned because, like I said, I feel like that ending is a little too harsh for the themes of this show. But I feel like to get a happy ending, we'd have to do some time shenanigans, like Ira was saying, and like I feel like the worst case scenario, and still actually quite likely, is they pull like an Avengers Endgame where she pops into key points and tries to alter like things so that like it actually saves all the people that died, like go back and save.
Yeah,
no, that's totally what I'm expecting.
You mean that plot point that Avengers lifted from Kamen Rider Gaim, huh?
Yes.
All right, how about this? They figured out a way to save the past and thus save the future. But Matsumoto has to erase himself from history, from the timeline, and everyone will forget that Matsumoto ever existed, except for us, the viewer. Only we, the viewer, will remember Matsumoto's sacrifice to save the world.
I feel like the standard ending for this kind of thing, and one which is very in keeping with the way Vivy has told its story, is you can change something but only at great cost, right? So either Matsumoto dies, Vivy dies, or they both die, or time shenanigans erase them from existence. That's my prediction, at least. They save the future, but one or both of them is lost to the time stream.
Right. Well, we're gonna find out soon enough.
Yeah.
And
I guess so.
I don't know. I mean, even if they went that route, I'd be disappointed. But as a whole, I still think it'd be a net positive with the show. It's been great this whole time.
I think it depends on how they tell it. I think Vivy's strength has not necessarily been overwhelmingly original ideas, but terrific presentation.
Right.
So, and by presentation, I mean writing and storytelling as well.
We're 10 episodes in. It's got at least some goodwill going for it with me at this point. So
of course.
Yeah.
All right.
Speaking of shows about time-traveling robots...
yeah. Let's talk about Megalobox 2 Nomad.
Yeah, okay.
How have things been going in that?
It's been going good, but,
since we last spoke.
In a much different direction than Vivy, of course. So, the thing with Nomad is... I don't want to say we are at a bit of a crossroads here, but... I like Megalobox a lot. I like a lot of what Nomad has done from a writing standpoint of Joe's character. I think at this point, the way I currently feel about it is, I feel good about it, but also I think it needs to prove itself to me that it can stick the landing with where it seems to be gesturing toward. So
yeah.
The long and short of it is that Joe has kind of like, at this point, he has like kind of mostly earned him, earned his place back in the lives of most of his family. Like Sachio has, still the stubborn holdout who refuses to forgive him. But like for the most part, the rest of his family, found family are at least willing to be on like amicable terms with him again. Right. So and it is shown that like Joe repeatedly has made it clear that like
he's done boxing.
He is done boxing, right? Like, he still loves boxing, but he's not going to do it anymore. Or at least he's not going to do it for he's not going to do it for his pride anymore, right? Like, it is no longer a thing that drives him on an instinctual level. And this all kind of, like, is related to kind of what is the simmering B plot, which is a championship match between Edison Liu, who's the man who defeated Joe in the first place, 7 years ago, and a new challenger, Mac Rosario, aka Mac Time, who is a sort of up, kind of, or maybe Big Mac. Honestly, he's kind of beefy.
I love Big Mac Time.
He is another kind of like underclass boxer who kind of rose from the gutter, but his story is a lot more like harrowed and violent. He was kind of famous for being a real like kind of berserk style boxer, just kind of like threw himself at his opponents come hell or high water, before switching careers to a police officer. But they made the claim he was a good cop, that he did his best for the people in his
and he's one of the good ones,
and he got paralyzed like saving kids from a burning building.
Yeah, so the implication is he was a good one. Like he tried his best.
Pillar of the community.
Well, they should have made him a firefighter then, but go on.
Yeah,
yes.
Right. I know, right? Like he saved kids from a burning building, so it's like, couldn't you just made him a firefighter? Like, but point is he gets paralyzed from like the neck down or something, and like he is offered a chance to get his life back by this mega corporation called Roscoe, who is collaborating with Shirato, who were the mega corporation from season 1, who sort of like spearheaded the gear technology. But Roscoe suggests a different solution, which is a brain chip that is inserted into the subject and sort of like reawakens and repairs their like destroyed nerve endings, and thus Mac gets his limbs back. He becomes ambulatory again. But not only is he ambulatory again, not only does he have his life back together, and he can hold his children. He wants to get back into megalo boxing. So.
Yep. So they sponsor his return to the sport, and he's rising up the ranks as the beloved Mac Time.
And he is very clearly designed. He's very clearly framed as like a counterpart, like a modern counterpart to Joe. Like, he is the people's hero. He rose from the underclass. Mm-hmm. Like, he's fighting for his pride and his family. I mean, basically everything Joe was in season 1. And so Mac and Lou fight, and Lou initially dominates the fight until Mac activates his famous Mac Time, which is, for some reason, ever since Mac Rosario came back to the ring after getting this brain chip enhancement, would sometimes enter a Berserk Fury mode that enhanced his powers, basically.
And, oh, that's lethal.
Oh yeah, no, everybody's like, wow, that's Mac for you. He just got the right stuff in him, and nobody is like, is it the chip? Is it the chip in his brain?
Yep.
But he goes.
So he just beats the shit out of Lou and beats him into a coma.
Right, beats him to a coma, just like savage, like Ivan Drago beating Apollo Creed, just like one-sided, just like it feels like an execution. And it's revealed that Mac is definitely suffering from some like.
It's affecting his mental state somehow.
It is affecting his mental state. Like, it's almost like being framed as PTSD. Like, when he hears certain noises or certain stimuli, he sort of reverts to an animalistic state, basically. And his family is concerned, even, like, some of the corporation people are concerned. But the CEO of Roscoe is firm that, no, the brain chip is working exactly as intended. There are no problems here.
Can't wait to sell this to the military.
Right, can't wait to sell. I'm about to sell this to the military. We can't afford any hiccups now. Mac, I think you're just tired. Get some sleep. Maybe take the weekend off. And it's clearly building up to like a very like, highly likely to be violent and problematic like episode for Mac.
Yeah.
And this all kind of culminates in, like, the CEO basically convincing Mac, like, no, you see, Mac, like, it's just because, like, it's because you have unfulfilled dreams. That's why you're having these episodes. Wasn't your dream always to fight Joe? If you fight Joe, that'll, like, fix things, right? And Mac is he's a good-natured dude, but he's maybe a little too willfully ignorant even for this setting. And
right.
So he agrees to it and challenges Joe to another boxing match, and that's kind of where the episode ends. And I think the thing for me that I'm a little, like, concerned about is, like, the show made so many efforts to kind of make it clear that, like, it's not that there was nothing left in the ring for Joe, but that, like, the reason why Joe's life fell apart is because he entered the ring for all the wrong reasons. So, like, this being a manga about boxing, I'm not going to be delusional, right? I'm not going to, like, set myself up for disappointment. Joe will fight back. Like, there's no point in convincing myself otherwise. This will happen. And so the thing I need to see from Megalobox is, can the people who wrote all the really wonderful character stuff in the first, like, 8-9 episodes, can they convince me that Joe has a good reason to fight this man? Because so far, there really isn't one. Like, there's no, like, real personal stake in it for Joe. So, like, why would he fight this, like, man who is clearly, like, on a very dark path?
I feel like I'd be disappointed if they just, like, drum up another group of orphans to save or something, right? Like,
yeah, I know. I think what it might be is Shirato might ask Joe to fight so they can, like, get proof of Mac Time or something to shut down the Roscoe or something like that.
Yeah, which is like it is admittedly yes a more holistic motivation, but again it feels the show has been so personal. Like the show has always been so personal about the interiority of Joe as a character.
Right.
Like, he doesn't strike me as the type of character who would like, I'll do it to save the, to stop the evil corporate. Like that's just not really who Joe is.
He needs a personal motivation.
Like, yeah. So.
I mean, would it be to like make up with the one person he hasn't made up with yet?
Yeah, with Sachio.
Maybe. Like the thing that I thought might work is that Chief originally all the way back earlier in season 2, Chief fights for money. That's basically it. And he was one of the most admirable characters in the whole show. They made it extremely clear that Chief was an admirable person because he fought for money. He didn't fight for ideals. He fought to make money to support his family. And so I could see them try to set up a parallel here where, like, Joe will enter the match, not for ideology, not for pride, but to make a payday with which he can use to support his family, to make good for when he left them when they needed him most.
Right.
And I could almost see them justifying that, but again, they will need to put in some work to sell this. And the show's been really good so far, so I want to believe they can do it, but it is maybe on slightly shaky ground.
I mean, my biggest concern is, like, now does Joe die, and then you undo all the subversion of the original series
I hope
that
not.
they've been doing?
I truly hope not, because this show has done such a good job of, like, getting away from the legacy of Ashita no Joe, or at least being in conversation with it, that to kill Joe, I think, would be a very, like...
I mean, they could frame it as him dying for an entirely different reason.
Right.
Yeah, but, I mean...
I'm not saying they should.
That's a tough... I don't think they should kill Joe. Like,
right.
Like, it feels... Because this is one of those things in fiction where dying is the easy way out, right? Like, dying means you don't actually have to confront your problems anymore. Whereas, like, I feel like the big, like, theme of Megalobox 2 is that Joe cannot die because he owes it to the people he has wronged in his life to live so that he can repent for what he's done.
Right.
So,
or maybe he just gets beaten so badly that he really literally can't box again or something.
Right. Maybe he gets crippled like Yuri did at the end of season 1. Like, I could see that being... They could become wheelchair buddies. I don't know. But, yeah, it's good. Like, again, like, as always with Megalobox, like, wonderful presentation. Mabanoa's music in the last couple of episodes has maybe been the best it's ever been. Like, in a show that has already been famous for great music, like, the usage of his music to evoke certain tones throughout the last couple of episodes has been masterful. Like, there are no issues on the technical side of things, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, well, we'll see if they stick the landing. Yeah. But it sounds like there's still some question marks going into the end there.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, we got a lot more anime to talk about, so keep it rolling here. Let me sneak in my Super Cub minute. Show continues to be great. They since we last talked, they do a little mini time skip of about 6 months. And now it's like winter time, so the girls are trying to get their winter gear together.
When suddenly AI destroys the world.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But no, it's pretty great because, I was talking about how I appreciate there's actual, like, character development and growth going on in this show. And it's
right.
And now that we've had the time skip, like, the girls are, like, actually, like, real friends now. They're, like, constantly hanging out and talking, and, like, the main girl's getting, like, downright sassy. It's pretty great. And they do their spin on the cultural festival episode.
Sure. Do they drive somewhere instead?
Oh, of course, yeah. It's pretty great. There's a scene where there's been a third girl on the OP that we have not met, and this is like episode 8 now or something. Like, we have not met the third girl yet. So we finally meet her. She's the student council president. She's like this tiny little girl, and she's trying to organize the class cafe for the festival. And they're talking about what they're and like the main girls don't care. They're just gonna go ride their motorcycles. and so then they overhear them talking like, oh no, the teacher was supposed to deliver the coffee makers, and they can't do it now, and we don't have a car to bring them over. What are we gonna do?
God.
and so they're like, well, maybe my parents could do it. I'll call them, and they're working stuff out. And so the main girls again are like, well, sucks for them, and they're about to walk out.
Oh wow, okay, never mind. Just bail on them. That's great.
Until one of the kids is like, well, we could use motorbikes, but there's no way that would work. They wouldn't be able to carry that much equipment.
Doubting the Super Cub, are you?
Fear not.
And so the girls just stop. They don't say anything to each other. They just stop in their tracks. They turn around, and they're like, all right, we'll take care of it.
Christ.
So they get like a trailer and one of those like I don't know what you call them, those like delivery apparatus things you've seen on the back of some of the Super Cubs before that carry stuff, and they manage to figure out how to do it. My personal favorite shameless plug in this whole sequence was, if that wasn't a plug enough, they go to the other school to pick up the coffee machines, and one of the teachers is like, oh yeah, my grandpa's a Super Cub. Maybe I should ask him if he can, give it to me. And she and one of the girls is like, no, you should buy a new one. And then they just ride off.
Oh man, like I said last episode, man, Japanese product placement is the best.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why we love it, but it's pretty great.
The audacity, the blatantness of it.
It's something to do with the blatant. It's so obvious it becomes charming in a weird way.
They're not trying to fool anybody.
Like fucking.
It's honest.
If Lexus gets the contract for product placement in a movie, you'll just see a bunch of shots of like Lexuses from the front, so you can see the logo on the front, grill. Right. But like, if a Japanese product got the Lexus like endorsement, it's like a character fucking looking at the camera and being like, only a Lexus could handle.
I've got to put in a shout out here for Jackie Chan and his sponsorship partnership with Mitsubishi.
Are you about to say Mitsubishi? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Especially in Wheels on Meals.
Dude.
Where the old lady jumps a crossing with her car and then gets out and says, "You idiots! Lucky I've got a great car, or I'd be dead."
Dude, you don't even. I literally watched Wheels on Meals yesterday.
So good, good.
Pretty great.
So good.
So of course this stunt so impresses the student council president that she wants to hang out with them, although currently she only has a weak and inferior regular bicycle. So she has not gotten her Super Cub yet, but it's only a matter of time. And so they start hanging out.
Actually, to that logic, so are all the girls driving like the latest Super Cubs then? Like nobody's like kind of using an old beater. Or
well, let me tell you.
Oh my
god.
God.
The main girl has an old one.
Okay.
It's like the classic.
Yeah. Okay,
the classic
the OG.
Super Cub.
Yeah.
And her friend had an old one that got destroyed when I was telling you about her trying to drive up Mount Fuji.
Right.
So she bought a new one, which was like the hot, like souped up model.
Okay.
Yeah. So she's got like this really nice one, and then the main girl has like the classic version, and it remains to be seen what the third girl will get, which is interesting because we're now on 9 episodes in, and there's not gonna be a lot of time for her.
Electric Super Cub.
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
Yeah, maybe she'll get like the super modern one or something. I don't know, but yeah. There was one weird bit I wanted to mention. So the class president apparently is like half American or something, and her family has this like weird German bakery / American diner that they run, and for some reason, like when they introduce her mom, who is presumably American, like she's like completely ashamed of her and doesn't want the girls to see her, and like covers up her face when she comes in. I was trying to figure out, like, is she ashamed that her mother's a foreigner or something? Like, because it wasn't like she came in like, stereotypical anime American, like twirling around in a Stars and Stripe bikini or something, right? Like it was just like she was just like a normal, nice middle-aged woman that happens to have blonde hair and blue eyes, and I was like, that's kind of weird. I couldn't figure out what they were going for with that. But
yeah.
Anyway, other than that, show's pretty great. I'm enjoying that. So, all right, let's move along and talk about 86.
Number 86. Number
Has
86.
anything improved since we last spoke about 86?
No,
86.
the show is still less than the sum of its parts.
Oh, you beat it. You beat me to it, Eero. That was my review of this show. But yes, like as Eero was alluding to, 86 is the bizarre show in which the like individual pieces of it, taken out of context, sound like perfectly enjoyable anime military fiction, but when taken in aggregate as like the sum of its parts, is somehow a worse product. Like,
that's continues to disappoint, huh?
Yeah, like, I don't know. So like the last 2 episodes, okay, I think, what was it? Like basically we find out that the 86 Squadron that Lena commands is not just a suicide squad, it is the double suicide squad. And basically the reason they haven't been able to get new and reinforcements is because any 86er in the field from any other squad, if they actually manage to live through their 5-year conscription period, then gets transferred over to the 86 squad that we know of as like basically to ensure that they die in the field.
Right, and like Lena looks up like old orders for her squad and finds that periodically they literally just get a suicide mission of go attack this base with no reinforcements, and if you retreat, we'll blow you up.
Yes.
And that this has happened several times to just clear out the squad, and now it's her turn.
And it's like, so here's the thing. I am not so naive as to think that the military in any world, in any country, in any time period is not capable of needless cruelty. But the needless cruelty in 86 is like, it's so over the top, like it actively hurts like the people committing the cruelty, and thus it
I was going to say there's no military advantage to doing that.
Right, there's like zero. It's literally nothing is to be gained from it, right? Like usually,
you're actually throwing away resources.
Right, because they still have to equip them with tanks and ammunition and stuff to keep up the pretense of this is a legitimate military unit. But like. Right. Again, like, look, like, penal battalions are a real thing in human history. I will not give the same, like, spiel I gave Eero, because this is not Legend of the GLORIO Heroes, where I can go on my history tangents. But the point is, like, penal battalions have existed in history for highly specific reasons in human history. And the penal battalion in 86 is, like, so comically, like grim. It doesn't even make sense, because it's not like the people in power even get anything out of it other than it's a very expensive execution. Like, they literally say, like, we are, like, one of the characters says, we explicitly desire to commit genocide of the 86ers. Like, that is our explicit stated goal, and we will do it by putting them into expensive robot tanks and sending them to their deaths instead of just, I don't know, lining them up in front of a firing squad.
Impressive misuse of the word genocide there as well.
Well, I was going to say
to fight the robots is the thing. It's like absurd. Go ahead.
I was going to say, is this a racism thing, or are they just trying to keep him quiet about the secret, or what's
like
the motivation?
Yes and yes.
Both? Yeah.
Okay.
Like, there's an incredibly wacky scene where they literally the Lena's scientist friend like goes on a tirade about her dramatic backstory and how she used to be friends with an 86er kid until she just like learned of their issues and shouts "you filthy colored" at him.
Whoa.
And it's
yep,
so on the nose and ridiculous.
It's just, you can see what the show is trying to do. You can see why the show, in the broadest sense of the term, probably has like relatively benign intentions, but it is like wielded in the most, like, in the clumsiest, like, heavy-handed ways possible. Like, it thus loses any sense of nuance or actual, like, ability to affect me emotionally.
So, does Lena actually do anything about this, or...
Kinda.
Okay.
Like, that's also the thing that's kind of, like... The Lena parts of the show continue to be the weakest parts, because she continues to sort of just be the ineffectual, like, liberal that, like, condemns what is being done, but, like, does not do enough, does not commit to enough tangible action to... Like, I'll say that she tries, like,
right.
you know...
They try to make it seem like she's trying and just getting stonewalled.
Right.
Except they only show her trying, like, once.
Yeah, and, like, here's the thing. I don't mind that she fails. In fact, I think it is thematically appropriate she fails. Because one of the characters literally makes the point, like, what are you going to do? Like, give a heartwarming speech and convince the entire military-industrial complex to change its mind? Like, that's not how this works. Like,
right.
And I wouldn't want that, right? I would not want her to give the heartfelt speech with the Sawano insert track, and then suddenly the warmonger, you know, the third, wipes a tear out of his eye and claps, right? I don't need that. I don't want that. Like, that would be even more insulting. So, her failing to drum up any support fits, actually. Like, it is thematically appropriate. Yeah. And so, in an individual, as an individual scene devoid of context, I'm like, that's actually a good scene. The problem is in the context of the show, it is the latest in a line of her ineffectual attempts to get anything for her 86, like squatties. Like she has failed at every turn to gain them any tangible benefit, despite her position as a member of the, like, military leadership. So, it just continues to make her seem, like, ineffectual and like, impotent. Like, just, like, why is she even here? And...
Right.
The 86 side is a little bit better, because it does probably one of my favorite tropes in, like, military fiction, which is, like, it does the montage of, like, the last few remaining surviving members of the squad kind of going through the motions on their last day before the suicide mission, you know? Like, one of them cleans the windows, another one's just, like, cooking up a meal, you know, another one's, like, reading a book, you know? Maybe they'll finish this book before they die, right? Like, just... People are living their lives, and that feels like a very honest interpretation of, like, what military life is actually like, and I think it's, like, relatively well done. Like, there's the great classic shot of, like, the last 5 of them sitting in this, like, gigantic cafeteria that's meant to house, like, 50 people, and, like, It feels very lonely, right? There's 5 of them left, they're all on one table, it's the only table that's lit up, and it actually does an effective job of communicating the very real, like, stakes that have been in this show. But, again, it is all in service of a show whose, like, overall aggregate storytelling, like, constantly fails to hit the mark. So, that's why it feels like it's a collection of, like, individually really interesting scenes strung together into a story that's just not particularly compelling.
Yeah.
So, do they actually kill everybody?
Basically, yeah. Like, at this point, like, again, like, they start... I mean, so here's the thing. In classic Valkyria Chronicles, like, manner, they started off with, like, 30 squad mates. Like, 10 of them were the ones who actually mattered. You know what I mean?
Right,
like,
right.
You look at those 10 in the lineup, and you're like, oh, okay, you're the one with pink hair, you're the one with, like, the scar. Okay, you guys are the ones who actually matter. But they have been pretty good about steadily killing them off throughout the show.
But if they're so have we left off with them down to only 5 and we don't know what's going to happen yet, or
right, well, the like 5 quote unquote main ones that are still alive are going off on their big important mission now.
Okay.
Yeah, their suicide mission where they're fucking...
But they have not technically died yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
And the idea is, like, you know, Lena is like, why don't you just run away? Like why do you do this? And again, like, because of the dumb, like, plot reveal from, like, last time, right? Like, they know that the main dude, the squad leader, Undertaker, that his brother's brain has been, like, used as a biocomputer to increase the AI's, like, processing power. Right. So, like, for him, there's a personal stake in it, right? He is charging into the suicide mission because he wants to, you know, perform the mercy killing of his brother, and I guess the other 4 are along for the ride because of Nakama or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think they'll actually go through with it, or will they pull something out their ass to save them?
Oh, they'll pull something out their ass.
Okay.
Undertaker will probably survive. Maybe he's
Yeah.
the only survivor, but he will definitely survive. Like, my understanding of this light novel is still concurrent, so, like, he'll definitely live. Maybe the other 4 will die. Maybe 1 or 2 of them will live. Who knows? But, like...
Yeah, I was going to say that to keep the story going, you'd have to, like, bring in another squad or something, right? Like,
Right. My suspicion is that, you know, they will succeed where nobody else has had. They will succeed what should have been a suicide mission, and that will cause some sort of, like, status quo change because, like... You know, they lived when the stated purpose of this mission was to kill them, and that will, like...
They will suddenly have a higher value than just dying at that point. Right.
But, you know, we'll see.
Yeah. That's always disappointing when a show underperforms, like, because it does sound like there's some cool ideas to play with there.
Yeah, they're really trying by the sound of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's try and unpack Odd Taxi.
We have fully entered the Yakuza dimension.
Things have gotten wild over the past 2 episodes, if they weren't wild already.
It's such a great example of escalating and making even small things seem super crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the biggest plot point was introducing Yano, who we've had mentioned before, but we haven't met him. He's been mentioned as Dobu's rival.
The rapping porcupine gangster
who rides a scooter.
Rides a razor scooter.
Just like... I know we should, like, probably do this episode by episode, but Yano is, like, a really fascinating villain for me, like, because, like, his appearance and presentation makes him seem like the most, like, shitty millennial stereotype. Right. But, like, he is in many ways actually the most, like, fucking, like, unnerving villain in this
He's
show.
a bad dude. He's a bad man.
The thing I've been saying is that the show intentionally uses the distance between his overtly comic persona and the stuff he is actually doing to create deliberate dissonance, and it makes it like, really unnerving, as you say.
Right, like, it creates that interesting contrast where, like, Dobu is the devil you know, like, he's a thug, and you know it. He's very upfront about it, right? In a ways, it's you are not surprised when Dobu is willing to, like, mercilessly beat a dude on the street. But, like... Yano's, like, entire thing is, like I was saying in the chat, Yano feels like an actual, like, villain from the Yakuza games. Yes. Like, you could have a cutscene of, like, when Yano makes Kakihana call his mom. That feels like a fucking, like, cutscene. That feels like a villain establishing cutscene straight out of a Yakuza game.
Right.
I think
now I need to smash this guy's face in. Right.
I think one of the important things as well is that even though... to us, the audience, Yano is such a completely ridiculous figure. Everybody in universe treats him deadly seriously, and he takes himself deadly seriously as well. Like... And so you see this character who kind of is surfing on this wave of arrogant self-belief, and nobody wants to stand up to him because they're just terrified of him. And I think it works really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then we also get Otokawa kind of making his move in trying to use Dobu and all the other things going on, and we kind of get the people start questioning whether Otokawa has psychic powers
or mega synesthesia, like
which I will again point out as someone with synesthesia, that's not how synesthesia works, but yes, they're trying to figure out he has some kind of like recall or something that they're trying to figure out. I doubt that he actually has psychic powers like they're saying, but there's something up with his brain.
I mean, I think the show has been implying that Otokawa has some sort of condition. Like, I don't want to say, like, I don't know enough about various things to say what exactly that is, but, like, the doctor looking at his brain scans has been a little bit it feels like that there's something he has to say about that, you know, so I don't know if they're trying to imply that Otokawa is, I don't know, insane, perhaps. Like, I've seen a lot of theories floated around that he's hallucinating everything and everything like
not
that.
Seeing the world as we're seeing it.
I definitely don't think the implication. I don't think even the show is necessarily implying that far. I think it's more like the implication seems to be that Odokawa is perceiving the world differently. But like, I don't think it's. I don't think we're gonna end up with some situation where nobody was actually real or anything like that. Like, I think the thing like there's been far too much like emphasis on like the very like real ass things that have been happening to characters even outside of Odokawa's sphere of influence. That I think that it's probably going to lead into that part where, like, they say that Odokawa is, like, weirdly good at recognizing people. And, like, it's probably a lot easier to pick out a person in a crowd if you know they're a cat or something. Or they look like a cat to you, right?
I think I was... the word I was looking for was disorder, almost. Maybe
Sure.
he is neurotic or bipolar or something like that, But I also think that, like, a lot of the he's crazy and he sees all the people as animals stuff, a lot of it is just anime fans tend to have a tendency to want everything to be over explained, and sometimes it's just it's not that deep, bro. They're animals because it's more visually interesting than making them people,
right. Like we said before, sometimes they're just animal people.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think I get what you guys are getting. I guess I just feel like the implication is becoming too much a part of the text now that I feel like it's hard to ignore. Like,
yeah, there's something.
There's something there. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a couple of other things that I wanted to point out. I think that the show is incredibly good. I mean, we've said this before, but at kind of the slow tension ratchet where things just get gradually worse in kind of like weird ways. Like the evolution of extremely online dude we've seen from him wanting to go viral on Twitter to now he's like stirring up a hate mob basically and like posting vigilante screeds on YouTube and stuff, and just kind of like seeing him gradually go that. And there's one thing I really liked as like a character piece, which is where Kakutani's finally been taken in and like beaten up, and the girl he was going to propose marriage to, the honey trap, she says, "I can't do this, I want out." But it's not because she feels sorry for him.
Right.
She hates him. She thinks he's creepy as hell. She just wants out because she finds it a pain and she doesn't want to have to pretend to be. And I think pretend to be attracted to old guys anymore. And I think that's like a really good piece of texture because, of course, the classic cliche is that, oh no, he's genuine.
She really did love him.
Yeah, he's genuine.
Like the stuff
for
Shirakawa was saying before.
No, like she doesn't feel guilty about it. She just wants out for her own sake, and that doesn't necessarily make her villainous per se, but also it bucks the expected story.
I think that's one of the most interesting things, particularly with Kakutani, because a lot of the other characters.
Also, I need to swing in real quick. Kakutani is the anti-AI vigilante. Kakihana is the washed-up 40-year-old janitor who's dating 18-year-old women.
You're absolutely right.
What's interesting with him is, like, more so than the other characters, it's kind of a mix of, you feel a little sympathy for him, but also he brought pretty much all of this upon himself.
It's that classic combo of like pity, but also like
I mean, maybe the guy doesn't need to deserve to be mercilessly beaten in the and forced to call his mother, but
also his sins are so minor. I mean, it's not like he's been like a creepy perv or anything like that. He's just desperately like naive.
I think that's a fairly charitable reading of Kakihana. Like, I think that, like in the grand scheme, especially in the show where like now we were beginning to see some of the rot of these characters underneath. Like, yes, Kakihana in the grand scheme of things is a fairly benign character. Like, like look. Yeah, it's a little creepy, but there's technically nothing illegal about a 40-year-old dating, an 18-year-old person, right? It's like,
I mean, I would say that the show acknowledges how creepy it is. The reason it works is because it's a little uncomfortable, and also because it is so obviously a trap.
Right, but like at the end of the day, it's like the worst thing he ever did was, the worst thing that he ever did are things he did to himself, right? Like, Kakihana didn't hurt other people. Every dumb action he took, like, hurt him, taking out the loans and dealing with, fucking loan sharks and
Yeah.
Right. He's still a sympathetic character.
Yes.
Is he more or less sympathetic than Simp-kun, the idol guy?
I got a soft spot. I got a soft spot for Simp-kun just because like
he means well.
He hasn't, right.
Simp-kun actually hasn't done anything wrong.
He actually technically hasn't done anything wrong, right? Like if
Other
you want
than
to
get suckered by the idol industry,
right? Like if you want to create the 2-point axis of Odd Taxi, where one axis is like did everything wrong to did literally nothing wrong, and the other axis is like sympathy versus no sympathy, like. He is probably the most sympathetic character who hasn't actually technically done anything wrong, other than being an idiot about his lottery winnings.
Right.
Like I'm not sure. Like, is that just how the lottery works in Japan? Like, you choose not to cash in your lottery ticket. Like, is that?
I mean, I would imagine most real life lotteries take a while to pay out. Like, you don't go in the next day and they give you a check or
but
something.
Also, the lotteries don't, like, just hand you a sack of cash and be like, all right,
maybe
you're
they
on your
do
own
in Japan,
to walk to the bank.
Right,
like,
I don't know.
You
I know.
I
know in America they pay it out over time. They don't give you $1 million in a sack, right?
The check's just for show.
Though, both like Simp Idol Dude and Kakihana are like great examples of, again, the show is really good at depicting how simple mistakes and small interactions sort of spiral out of control. Like in Kakihana's case, he just got in too deep, and that's kind of happening to Idol Guy as well. First he was just like likes the group and maybe is in love with the lead singer, but then he won the lottery and now suddenly he's at the center of this weird bank robbery come conspiracy theory,
or a gotcha gamer going back to buying erasers, right? Like,
right, yes, but just that kind of, the show has been very good about building up those plot lines little bit by little bit, so that when, eventually, now that we reach the point where everything has snowballed so rapidly out of control, you believe that everybody went in with the best of intentions, Although sometimes those best intentions were, I'm going to rob a bank or beat someone up.
I think that's a good way of putting it, Sig, is that, like, this show has really, like, I think snowball effect is really the best way to describe, like, the ways in which Odd Taxi is escalated. Because, again, like, we all remember those first few episodes where we were just like, what's going on here? Is he hiding a girl in his closet? Like, and now we've escalated to, like, the fucking, like, Charlie Day fucking, like, wire corkboard conspiracy of, like, okay, so Gotcha Gamer has at least two bullets left in his gun. Dobu is trying to rob a bank. Yano is currently, like,
but Dobu also
here.
might be number one on the Gacha Game leaderboards.
Right, exactly. Like, the comedy duo's over here, and one of them is dating Nikaido, who's part of this whole fucking catfishing. It's like, it's
is she, though? That's the question. Is she in on the catfishing too, or is she excluded?
She knew about it, yeah.
She must be. She must. Like,
she knew about it, yeah.
But is she excluded from actually doing the dirty work because she's the face and the one actually making
that's
the
what
money?
That was what they implied.
Yeah, I think they were implying, is that the lesser to...
When the Calico asked, like, can I quit? And she was told, like, well, you're not making as much as Nikaido is, so you're going to have to keep doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So... I mean, that's right. Like, there's a lot of, like, fascinating, like, at bare minimum, there's a lot of people in this show who are complacent with some pretty dirty shit. So
right, yeah, everybody's got their hands into something, or at least knows about something. But all right, so last chance here for wild predictions. Like, what's in Otakado's closet?
It's a cat.
You think it's a cat?
A regular
cat. Just a regular cat. Could be.
I can't believe at this point that he actually has a girl in there.
I don't think so, especially with the reveal of them, like, fishing a body out of the ocean. Like,
yeah, they kind of make that joke, right? Because the cop guy is like,
"Have you got a girl?
Do you have the girl in the closet?" And he's like, "No."
Right.
And also with everything we've seen about Odakawa, he just doesn't seem like the kind of person who would either take in a teenage runaway or kidnap a teenage runaway.
Do we know Otakawa? Do we really know?
Well, that's the question.
The rules of writing dictate that, like, that the scenes in which Otokawa is like isolated should be presented in good faith, right? Like if like the next episode has a sudden flashback to the real Otokawa, then it has like broken some key rules in like how
the
to, like,
heavy rain rule.
Yes, right. Yeah. Yes, I mean yes, for a great example of bad writing.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know. If that was just a red herring, I feel like that's all a little disappointing. But I would also be disappointed if you actually had a girl there. I don't know what I want out of that.
I mean,
that is
I
the weird
think,
thing I feel about this show.
I don't think it's a red herring because the girl is important in other ways, right? She's the daughter of the crime lord who is above both Dobu and Yano. So,
right. And
like,
he still has that camera footage. And
yeah. So she is still
something
connected to the plot in other ways. And it's just so much fun seeing them, like, pull to like tighten the web and watch all the strands pull together, and but some stuff is going to get wild.
Who takes a bullet first?
I mean, at
YouTube
least
guy.
Well, we want YouTube guy to take the bullet
we
first.
want the YouTuber to get shot. My sad, uncomfortable like feeling in my gut is that if there's going to be any piece of shit who gets out of this relatively unharmed, it's probably him. He gives me that vibe of like the character who's just infuriating to see get off scot-free, but will because he occupies a specific type of banal evil that is not as easy to like throw the book at as, say, a bank robbery or kidnapping.
Right.
Okay, idle simp then.
I think at least one shot is getting fired at Otokawa. Who knows? Maybe two. Like, I feel like...
Yeah.
I feel like that has to happen, right? Like, the build-up is too much, right? Like, you don't have Gotcha Gamer running around with a loaded gun unless he takes a shot at Otokawa. Like,
he already has taken a shot at him, but...
well, alright, fine.
I will point out also... Yeah.
Shot that could hit him.
I will point out as well that Gotcha Gamer has been conspicuously absent from the past couple of episodes as a physical presence. Like, obviously...
Well, he did get beaten by Dobu, right?
No, that was not actually him. That was just...
right. Yeah. That's right. Okay.
That was just a random dude.
That was one of his vigilante YouTubers, like, pretenders. Yeah, no. Gotcha Gamer's still out. He's a wild card.
Yeah.
And the thing that's, like, really interesting...
He has not appeared
and,
since he shot up.
Yeah. And, like, the really sinister thing about that is, like... He knows where Otokawa lives, right? So he is choosing not to make an appearance yet.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe he'll try to shoot Otokawa and he'll block it with his synesthesia powers.
This isn't Kanan. Like,
yeah. I just have to keep making fun of that, but
yes.
All right, let's keep moving. Let's talk about To Your Eternity.
Gugu is here. Gugu is the best.
Yeah, so I want to throw a question out to G and Iroh here as manga readers, because you guys have been asking me how I feel about the show, not knowing anything. How do you guys feel about the adaptation? I have somewhere I'm going with this, but
I think it's been solid.
It's complicated.
I mean, that's due to reasons of where the manga goes past the purview of this adaptation. Like, feelings can be complex. However, the actual quality of the adaptation itself, I think, has been solid.
Fine.
Okay.
Yes. The adaptation itself is a solid presentation of the current events of the To Your Eternity story.
Go ahead, Joe.
I kind of bring that up because, and I'll be interested to hear your take as well, Zig, because we haven't heard from you since the beginning of it. But I feel like I'm not feeling this show as much as I should be. Like, I'm not liking it, and I'm trying to figure out what is missing for me. I don't know if there's some kind of, like... I was curious if there's some kind of maybe, like, level of nuance or something that's missing being adapted into animation rather than being in a manga or something, but I don't know, like, there's a couple of things. For one, maybe it's we're not spending enough time with the characters before they go, or, like, we're not spending enough good time to balance out the bad time or something. I don't know.
I would say to that, unless Zig, you wanna jump off that.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me one of the problems is that Fushi just isn't really a character, and I get it's because, we are meant to watch his slow evolution into a fully grown character. But at the moment, it just kind of feels that, like, things happen around him, and that's not great,
Right.
He's not an
satisfying.
active protagonist, right?
Right.
He is very passive
It's not even that as well. It's that it's something about that there's no, like, because a protagonist is meant to be the conduit through which we see the story and the characters, right? And it just, there's such a, because he is dispassionate, because, again, he is learning emotion, he is learning attachment, it just kind of feels, the presentation feels very distant, it feels like we're watching a series of vignettes, and they are knowingly vignettes, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That's an interesting point, Zig.
I don't think that bothers me though. Like,
but I think I would agree with that. But I don't know, guys. We talk about this not being misery porn, but when who's the new kid? What's his name again?
Gugu.
When he takes the log to the face, I almost started laughing at how just like
it is comical.
Oh, it is funny. It is very funny.
How ridiculous, but not because it was meant to be, whether it was meant to be funny or not. Just how like cruel the whole thing.
Oh yeah,
was.
no, it's well. I mean,
and I don't feel like.
I will say as well. Sorry, can I say something first there, G? I think
go ahead.
that tonally as well, I think that part of the thing which interested me about this show was its sort of like big picture view on sort of life and existence and stuff like that. And that's one of the things I think which has been a strength of the show, which is why I wasn't really a fan of fucking Emperor Palpatine showing up and going,
that was the other point I was going to get to.
I've unleashed this Silent Hill monster on you, and now you must fight for your powers. And,
I absolutely hated that.
It feels like an out-of-genre experience in a very bad way.
And I would be willing to overlook a moment or two of that here or there, but I really don't want any big meta plot out of this, to be honest. That I really did not like that whole section at all.
It definitely feels like they're setting it up as kind of like, I am crafting you into the ultimate weapon so I can conquer the world or something.
Yeah, and then like...
And I'm sure that's not where they're going, but it feels like it.
And just petty side note, I can't stand that guy's voice. Ever since Pari Ranman, I can't stand that guy's voice.
He has been in good roles. I swear to God, he has. It's just
the past two, because it was him, and then he was the creepy lieutenant guy in
Magatsu Varheit.
Magatsu Varheit.
I swear he's had good roles. You have to believe me.
And now this one, and I'm like,
he was Kei Matuba.
He was Kei Matuba. He was
Sato Kaiba.
Sure, that was like 25
years ago. Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah, I mean, and then just coming back to my, I agree with that as well, Zig. I did not like that part at all, and just like going from one child being murdered to another one getting smashed in the face with a log and his life permanently ruined. I'm like, come on. Like, we need more, like, if this is supposed to be about, like, the full life experience, I feel like we need more of, like, the ups and not just the downs here. But, I don't know. I still I think it's good, but I just feel like it's not grabbing me the way it's supposed to. Like, I don't feel as invested in it as I feel like I'm supposed to be.
I think that's fair. And, okay, so here's my thing. So I think some of your guys' concerns about this story are well-founded and valid. Again, there are things I just cannot get into, but you guys, have some valid reasons to take issue with the story. I will say that in hindsight, maybe Fushi's development feels more natural in the pacing of manga compared to an anime.
Right.
I will say that, like, I hate to do this with an anime adaptation. I hate to pull the wait till it gets good, but like, give Fushi some time. He's a growing boy. He will develop.
But I mean, if you were reading the manga, you could have blown through all this in,
like.
I mean, I was reading it as it was going.
Right.
At the time.
Right. I will say, at least in terms of Arrow, you're with me, right? You can't stand this slander against Gugu. Like, it's.
Oh no, I'm fine with Gugu himself. It just
the problem is not with the character; it's with what he represents.
I know. It's just I'll just say this.
Did we really have to slam the poor boy's face in?
You'll get
Gugu's arc is not finished. All right,
you'll get a bit more time with Gugu than I think you got with March.
So that is the thing I want to say. I don't want to spoil anything, but I'll just say March specifically has a fairly short storyline. Like, in the context of like what To Your Eternity eventually becomes, March's story eventually becomes kind of a footnote pacing wise.
Right.
And much of this is that as Fushi himself develops more as a person, as he gains more self-awareness, as he interacts with the world more, that also means he interacts with the characters who show up in his life more. And you will start to see this with Gugu. Like, right now, Fushi is still quite childish, right? He still doesn't really quite understand what he's doing. But in many ways, the time that Fushi spends with Gugu will be foundational. It will, in many ways, define who Fushi, like, truly becomes as a person.
Yeah.
In many ways, I would say the thing you guys are seeing with Gugu right now is you are sort of like, it's sort of like you met Emil in Nier Replicant, but he hasn't turned into a skeleton boy yet. Like, you have met the character, you understand what the character is meant to represent, but you have not seen him grow into who he eventually becomes. Yeah. And Gugu's story is... It's
only just begun.
It's really good. It's really inspirational. I mean, actually like.
We know he eventually gains the power to breathe sick fire. So
Gugu is like one of the highlights of this whole story. Like Gugu is like maybe one like he's such a good character. Like I again I don't want to say give him time, but like
yeah. Yeah, I can see see that, and I'm willing to continue to give the show room to develop itself, but we are getting pretty deep into it.
I know.
So. I will also say that, like, and don't take this necessarily as a criticism because I don't think it is, but it's still a bit odd to me how the show kind of gear shifts between like serious prestige drama and kind of goofy comedy points. And I'm not sure I dislike it. I think it's rather cute, but it's odd.
You're right. Like, I mean, in many ways, like, you guys are saying there's not enough, like, of the upsides of life, and I feel like, I don't know, I feel like you actually get a lot of that with, like, when Gugu and Fushi spend time together. Like, Gugu had a hard life, all right? He had a hard life, and he is going to continue... Yeah, I didn't even talk
about his brother or whatever.
Yeah, like,
screwing him over.
Gugu is going to continue having a hard life, and some of the inspirational part is, like, you know, perhaps similar to a certain precious skeleton boy. It is Gugu's determination to live his life in the face of the things he faces. Like, yes, he had a hard life. Yes, he has been disfigured in this horrible accident, but like, he hasn't given up on life, you know? Like, look at that kid doing pull-ups, man. Like,
hell yeah.
This kid is determined to live. Like,
he's willing to pick himself up by the bootstraps.
I didn't mean it like that, but
God.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, I'm still enjoying the show. I'm willing to give it a chance. I'm watching it to the end, unlike another show that I dropped. But I just look. It's a good season, man. The bar is high right now for me.
Like, it's so weird thinking that, like, I think prior to the season, I think we were all kind of in agreement that, like, oh yeah, like To Your Eternity is going to be like the front runner of this season. Like, this is going to be the like.
And maybe it would be. Maybe it would be even for me in another season, but
maybe, yeah. But it's been such a competitive season, like, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of dropping shows, I just did not want to watch Pretty Boy Detective Club, and I decided to watch Godzilla Singular Point instead.
Yeah.
I've only watched the first two episodes.
Jet Jaguar.
Yes, I've only watched the first two episodes, so I don't really have a whole lot to contribute at the moment, other than I did like the first two episodes. I very much like the mood they're going for. Yeah. Like I just love the whole concept of like the mini Rodans being the herald of Godzilla and all that. Like
it's very well done.
It's very good build up I can see happening here.
The Rodan Defense League is writing you as we speak.
Yeah.
I mean, to all those people who like Rodan, let me tell you, like, what if I told you
that Rodan ain't shit?
Well, A, that, but also B, like, related to that, like, what if we approached a point in Godzilla Singular Point where there would be so many Rodans that they would blot out the fucking sun? Like,
Yeah.
it's like low-key kind of, like, it's an interesting type of kaiju horror because it feels, again, I'm not the biggest kaiju guy, but like I'll just say like where Godzilla Singular Point has been at lately is in a way similar to Odd Taxi. It has snowballed in a way where like even 2-3 episodes ago I was like, yeah, things are looking bad, but you know we're still on top of it. We still got a handle on it. Jet Jaguar will handle this. And now in the current episode, it's like the type of kaiju horror is like, how do I even describe? It's like, What if Rodan invoked the same feeling as seeing a horde of locusts descend upon a field of crops?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it kind of sounds like that they're trying to position it a little more towards eldritch horror in that case.
Kinda,
Like the image of these kaiju as like world-changing, reality-shattering things.
Right. It's been really well done, and like, again, like the show does such a good job of evoking tone with its imagery and its style of dialogue that I am willing to forgive its sometimes extremely heavy forays into technobabble.
Oh
yeah. I was going to point that out. Like, there's a lot of talking.
Yeah.
I feel like this show would benefit from the Dynazenon awkward silence.
Maybe.
I do feel that, like, because I watched the first episode alongside Iroh and Aqua, and I enjoyed the concepts that they were playing with, but I wasn't a huge fan of the presentation, and that was the thing which sort of gave me pause in that first episode.
It's not... I mean, I've only seen the first 2 episodes. I don't feel like it's like that all the time. There were just a couple of spots.
Right.
It's definitely like anytime the scientist characters show up, it feels like it gets a little, like, a little dense.
But just, like, moments, like... Because, like, in episode 2, they start just, like, having dead Rodans wash up on the beach and stuff like that. I'm like... See, that's like it's almost more terrifying than the live Rodan showing up. Like,
right,
where are these things coming from? And like, we don't know what's So
I mean, that is also a classic eldritch horror trope, right? Like something horrible and dead shows up, and you're like, this is terrifying. What would happen if it moved?
Right. Like, I think so. Here's the thing. I think that where we are, like, currently with Singular Point, I think the presentation and the imagery they use is so strong that, for the most part, I am willing to either overlook or tolerate the technobabble. I will also, however, admit, I think, Iro, you kind of got into this in a good way when we talked about it, if you want to bring that up.
Which part?
About the technobabble almost being more like tone or background, like music, than...
like you're not really supposed to be paying attention to what they're saying.
Just kind of let it wash over me, because at a certain point, it's like when you get to like the texting scenes, and they are texting 1,000 texts per minute, but the spoken dialogue is kind of just summarizing like all of the technobabble in their texts.
Right.
And that's sort of how I feel about when they're speaking the technobabble also.
It's almost like just flavor to show that these people are smart, and here's the points that you actually need to know.
Yeah. Like, I feel like anytime Singular Point feels like you need to understand a plot point, they do a pretty good job of communicating it.
Right.
But any of the texture of their, like...
Yeah, it's like they can spend 2 minutes talking technobabble, and what I can get out of that is we need the orthogonal diagonalizer to defeat Godzilla, and they just didn't want to have the dialogue say, we need the orthogonal diagonalizer to kill Godzilla.
Right.
Instead, we'll pad this out with some technobabble to make these people seem smart, like this is a big problem for big brains.
Right.
Unlike me.
Okay.
But also, let us regale
Meanwhile,
you the
Jet
tale.
Jaguar's over here, baby.
Jet Jaguar and the great bug hunt of the Tokyo Bay.
Jet Jaguar has equipped the Spear of Anguirus and is gonna fucking kill some Kamungas.
He is getting to work. Again, it is some fucking Doom Eternal. The only thing they have to fear is Jet Jaguar shit. Jet Jaguar, like, so to summarize, like, Jet Jaguar, a new type of kaiju has kind of crawled out of the sea. It's like a weird spider crab thing, and it's laying eggs and kidnapping people and eating them. And so they send Jet Jaguar into that warehouse to clear out the swarm. And so Jet Jaguar is just like, it's some fucking Lu Bu Dynasty Warriors shit. Just Jet Jaguar, like, surrounded by corpses of kaiju, on top of corpses of kaiju cutting down more. It's absurd because, again, like, JL, since you just watched the first 2 episodes, you kind of have an understanding of, like, how the scale of this show begins.
Yes.
And so the things I'm describing to you must sound fucking ridiculous, but yes. I assure you, they get there. Like, there's a linear path from where you are to Jet Jaguar cutting a bloody swath through these kaiju. There is literally the fucking, like, Ava taking out the umbilical cord, like, moment where, like, Jet Jaguar fucking purges the battery to get a burst of speed. It pulls off, like, a literal, like, Platinum Action Games, like, jump flip, like, spear dive kick move on these kaiju. It's so fucking crazy. It's probably actually the coolest thing Jet Jaguar has ever actually done.
In any medium.
Yes.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to catching up on that. I will try and get that done before we wrap up. But do you guys have any final predictions before?
So one last I want to give shout outs to. Speaking to all this Eldritch imagery, there is a shot at the end of the latest episode we watched, which is 9. Was it 9?
It was 9.
Where after they finish, like, fighting those kaiju and running away, I can't really
back to Tokyo and see the fallout of Big G.
And it's apocalyptic. Yeah. It's really good. It's like I don't rarely shout out just like a specific still or background in anime, but like this shot of like them in the foreground in their boat, like running away from like just this
big spiders,
Yeah, but also like further in the background, this horrifying like red eldritch, like it looks like a mushroom cloud. Like it's very intentional. Yes. Like this vortex like mushroom cloud.
Wow,
in the
Godzilla's
sky.
nuclear analogy. Who could have?
Yeah, I know, right? But like it's just like the art of it is like so well done. Like it truly like in its single still communicates to you the like.
It's like we just had trouble fighting the swarm of big spiders on one dock somewhere, and now we're out looking at this. What do we?
Yeah, I have to say the art direction has been really good on this series.
But yeah, in terms of predictions, I'm not sure. Like again, like look, I love Jet Jaguar. Like Jet Jaguar, ride or die. I don't think Jet Jaguar is going to fight Godzilla. That's not this kind of show. Like,
right.
Like as much as I brag about Jet Jaguar, like standing on on top of a pile of kaiju corpses, these kaiju are like the size of a car. Like they're not.
Yeah, do you know,
and again, this is like the 10-foot tall version of Jet Jaguar.
Do you know how many Godzillas it takes to block out the sun? 1.
Right, exactly. But so I don't think Jet Jaguar. I'm pretty sure Jet Jaguar is not actually going to fight Godzilla.
At least not successfully, right?
But also, Godzilla himself hasn't even really revealed himself yet, so we don't even have a good feel for, like, what type of Godzilla are we getting here? Like, are we talking about a Godzilla with an agenda? Are we talking about Godzilla purely the, like, force of nature? Godzilla, you know, the king of the monster? Like, we don't actually have a super strong feeling for what that is yet, and so it's actually still a little difficult to predict.
Let me make a pitch here. It's Godzilla versus Jet Jaguar, but what if Jet Jaguar could get real big?
What if?
What if he, like, did a thing where he said Jet Jaguar and punched at the screen and then he got bigger, like, whoop, whoop, whoop.
Tell me more.
Well, also he would have to be crucified at some point.
As you do.
Yes,
yeah.
Indeed.
But yeah.
So, unless they pull out a bigger Jet Jaguar, maybe my imagination is not big enough to handle.
Eero and I guess, sort of had our extremely out there prediction that we are like manically cackling about, and we're not sure we're actually serious about it, but we might as well put it out there in the podcast. Eero, do you want to get into your talk of maybe Jet Jaguar eating kaiju flesh to power up?
Oh right. So the show has dipped occasionally into the idea of the eponymous singular point, and how the doctor who's dead now used quote unquote singular points, which are like mega supercomputers, to calculate the future and see that the kaiju were coming, and that these singular points are made of the same material that the kaiju are made of. That's what allows the kaiju to have future sight and be so powerful. And so I was thinking I was half jokingly saying the only way for Jet Jaguar to power up enough to fight a kaiju is to beef up his calculation power with kaiju juice with singular point.
The only way to beat the kaiju is become the kaiju.
Exactly. Because Jet Jaguar is piloted at the beginning, but eventually the dude just uploads his AI buddy into it, right?
The AI program, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I was like, well, this computer, if it had enough processing power, could fight the kaiju. If we get enough archetype material, if we get enough red
I don't know
dust.
if that would resolve the fact that Godzilla is 30 times bigger than Jet Jaguar.
Basically, what if instead of LCL fluid, we just fill Jet Jaguar's chest with kaiju blood?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
I would believe anything at this point.
Who knows?
All right.
We'll see.
We'll see.
God.
Also, a thanks Netflix, because I believe the subs I'm watching are the official English Netflix subs, and they're just choosing not to release it in America.
Cool.
Just throwing that out there.
The
All right.
GLORIO blog does not condone piracy, except when it would be cool.
Yeah, I'm just predicting what the show. We're just
Give me a
predicting what the show
tricorn.
will be like when it comes out June 24th.
We are also using archetype to tell the future.
Yes.
I'm afraid, Ivo, the tricorn is Napoleon's hat, not
God
the
damn it.
pirate hat.
Oh, okay. That's important. All right. Let's finish up by talking about Dynazenon.
It's good.
Dynazenon.
Sure is.
You
good.
mean Super Dragon King Kaiser?
They called it
Grid
Kaiser.
Knight.
Super Dragon King Kaiser Grid Knight.
How long has it been since we had a robot call itself a Kaiser?
What, Mazen Kaiser, bro?
Mazen Kaiser, probably. Yeah. So let me remind.
We're of course referring to the climax of these two episodes, where everything that's been on screen combines together.
It's like a 6 unit gatai.
So Dynazenon basically becomes the super armor for Grid Knight.
Yes, as happened in Tokusatsu Gridman with the Dyna Dragon there.
Chisei's new kaiju friend Goldburn becomes the backpack and the chest, and
Oh yeah, man.
Yomogi becomes the bazooka.
The gun, and the big gun again. Yeah.
So
my only thing with that is the kaiju they're fighting seem kind of lame for that transformation.
A little, yeah.
I mean,
he was just he wasn't particularly better than any of the other ones at that point, right? It was just well,
he was bipedal, which is always in mecha terms is always implied to be stronger, right? So know.
But he still looked like a
weird building creature,
like a piece of shit. Yeah,
yeah. He didn't look like a final boss material that you would combine everything
for.
But yeah, I mean, again, we've got such a great marriage of the ridiculous super robot antics with the fantastic character work.
Yeah.
We kind of alluded to Chisei kind of finally getting her moment.
This is an interesting take on this subplot, the Pearl,
right.
Yes.
Again, I'm not saying I wanted it to go dark, but I think many of us were maybe had that sinister feeling of oh, this Pearl's gonna turn into something bad, right? This is gonna be catastrophic.
Even in the early going of it, you were like, oh yeah, they're gonna have to fight this thing.
So for it to be a very heroic, a very heroic moment, in fact, a very fulfilling moment for Chisei, right? Because we find out that Chisei's negative emotions come from her feeling of being left out, right? Her feeling of not being a part of the team, and unfortunately, just some badly timed statements out of context from the rest of the team make her feel even more isolated. But
and I'll just point out as well that that's sort of an extension. It's implied that she always felt isolated, even before all of the Dynazenon stuff.
Yeah.
And there were hints of that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And so I think it is interesting that instead of turning this into drama, like, oh no, Chisei loses her way, instead it's no, like, in a weird way, Chisei's negative emotions about not being a part of a team coalesced into a way for her to tangibly become a part of the team. It's a really interesting, fun, and like way more optimistic like resolution than I was expecting. But once I saw it happen, I actually turned around. I was like, you know what? This is cool. Like, this is awesome. Like, she's a part of the team now. She is the Green Ranger. Like, this is fun. Like, I'm so here for it.
I'm so glad they didn't go
this
that.
This could have been, as you said, G, this could have been like the Ava Unit 4 like moment. Possessed bit. And instead, no, she wanted to help, and so her kaiju wants to help also.
Right.
It's more optimistic.
It's cool. It's neat, yeah. And should we get into a little bit of the first episode of these two? With the or like the implication of like, is Yomogi a kaiju eugenicist?
Is he a kaiju?
Maybe that, right? Like,
yeah, we don't really get any clear. Like, he makes some kind of connection with it, but we won't get any clear answers on that.
No,
I guess my question is like, well, here's kind of my roundabout thinking. I mean, because we do see Chisei control her own kaiju later. I mean, if our theory is
but she's not taking control of it in the same way, right?
I guess
just listens
it's
to
more
her.
like
right, but they could not. The kaiju eugenicists could not instant dominate it. So.
I think the most interesting implication from that episode is, I think it's Gridnight who mentions that maybe this kaiju is like broken and useless because the person it came from is broken and useless, and then overnight it becomes giant, which presumably means that person found something in themselves, but we're not given any hint as to who this person or people might be, so it's kind of an open question at the end.
I mean, so my thing is like, if our prevailing theory is that Akane created Dynazenon, is Dynazenon just a kaiju in a roundabout way? And I feel
Galma
like
that's barely a twist at this point.
I feel like they've been throwing that out there, but
and like, Galma was one of the kaiju eugenicists, right? Like, so. I mean, I don't.
So it being a kaiju, I think, is possible because in the same way that Gridnight was like an evolved kaiju in a sense, right?
So, like, is it really that big a deal that Yomogi can do whatever he did? I don't know.
Right.
But they do.
I mean, are you saying
they don't bring up stuff for no reason, right? Like,
yeah.
Are you saying that his ability to pilot Dynazenon is what gives him the power to use instance domination?
Maybe they all can do that, and they just don't realize.
But they all try.
Right.
Yeah.
Even Galma.
Right. Like, Galma very much cannot control kaiju.
Yeah. So I don't know where they're going with that. Like I said, I mean, they wouldn't have brought it up if they didn't have some direction they were going with that.
Yeah.
But they kind of put that on the shelf for now, though.
Yeah. I mean, we still got a few episodes left, right? Like, it feels like we're approaching the climax, but we do have like, about 3 episodes left. So like, there's definitely still time to explore stuff.
Right.
The thing I wanted to actually shout out about episode was it 8?
8, yeah.
Is I really like that conversation Yomogi has with Auntie about like the nature of kaiju, and I feel like this is like maybe one of those times where I really think that using a legacy character was the best possible choice for Dynazenon, like,
absolutely,
because like it is relying on knowledge that only a legacy character could have.
Right, and the thing I pointed out in my post is that there is a level of dramatic irony there that is only apparent to the viewer because you know the past of Gridnight, and therefore you know he is almost like, you know that he speaks from experience, but also that he is kind of not giving these monsters the chance that he had. So it's kind of hypocritical, but at the same time pragmatic.
Well, and I think the thing that's interesting with that is that it is a tough question without an easy answer, because like, yes, Auntie was able to redeem himself, but like, we see like by and large most kaiju don't even possess the like basic ability of like, or
self-awareness
so far.
Like, yeah.
It's worth pointing out that none of the kaiju appear to have been actively malicious until the eugenicists took them over, though they have caused collateral damage by existing, but they have not really, like, even the one in that episode, like when it tries to climb onto the mall, it's not trying to climb onto the mall because it is trying to destroy the mall. It just doesn't realize that by climbing onto the mall, it will collapse the building.
They're basically like wild animals, and then eugenicists are controlling them, right?
Right, and I think that the interesting thing about how there isn't an easy answer is like, yeah, they might not have bad intentions, but it still might end up killing a lot of people, and it's like, we don't really have an easy way to harmlessly restrain them, so we gotta blow them up, right? It adds an interesting complexity to their mission.
I did kind of like that they're like, oh, we have to blow them up to protect life, and then in the next episode they're like throwing tower blocks into the air and jumping off of them.
Well,
it's still Super Robot Show.
They were fighting in the abandoned warehouse district.
Exactly.
Yeah. Also, just continuing to do a really good job with Yomogi and Yumei's
we got
side plot.
Yeah.
And her dealing with her sister and their relationship, and also Yumei's character is just, I just really love her character and the way she's handling the situation in a like understandable, realistic way, where she's not like totally consumed by what's going on, but also it's clearly very much affecting her. It's not
she's satisfyingly complex in her reaction.
Right. It's not like a big cartoonish, I'm so sad and useless.
But now I'm better because,
Yeah.
I want to... I'll go on, Jay.
I was going to say, I'm really curious about where Yumei's story is going to go, because I feel like there's some interesting implications with her reaction to the information she receives in episode 9, right? Like, because the prevailing like sentiment from a lot of people is like, maybe Kano really did just die in an accident. Like, there is no conspiracy. Right. There is no like dark tragedy, right? There is no like horrible secret she was hiding. Like, when Iro, you mentioned this, like when Yumei falls off the building, right, like by pure accident, it almost feel like that is in a ways like communicating like just how truly fragile human life can be, like how often, how banal our deaths can sometimes be, right? Like, you didn't jump off that building, you slipped and fell, and like that's sometimes that's all there is to it, right? And
all the people she's been talking to have been dead ends. And
I was going to specifically say I like their interaction with the ex-boyfriend a lot, especially the bit where Yumei just breaks out and goes, you should have saved her, you should have. And he just goes, yeah, you'd think that, wouldn't you? Because what the fuck are you going to say to that? What can you say to that?
What was he going to do, right? Like,
Like, it's just kind of, it's cruel in sort of like the best way for the story there.
And I they were clearly trying to contrast that with Yomogi coming back to save her.
Yeah, of course.
But, which I think in other contexts would be a little
hokey,
but
it is a little hokey, but
it is a little bit, but
like Dynazenon is hokey, but it makes it work, right? Because it's so sincere in its intentions.
They make it feel like uplifting,
and they've done the work to make that relationship feel earned. They've
like
done
when
the work.
when Yomogi shows up and Gama's like, "Where the fuck is Yumei?" And she's like, she's going through some shit.
She told me to come on without her."
And Gama's like, "You fucking idiot, go back and get her."
Yes.
It's a good demonstration that Galma is very, very dumb, but he's not stupid. Whereas Yomogi is kind of the other way around.
He's more emotionally mature than he appears, I think. But
like, the fun thing with Gama, yes, is that he is a little bit the joke character, but he actually, like, in his conversation with, in moments like his conversation with Koyomi and his bit with like Yomogi, he actually clearly possesses a pretty like mature, emotional,
like, he's an actual
adult.
Yeah, he's right, but
he just looks like a crazy pink-haired bum. That's all.
Right. But yeah, no, they've handled that really well and not like laying it on too thick of this is the romantic couple or whatever. Like, it's all very good.
The one thing I will say about episode 9 is that I enjoyed where it goes because, again, it goes to a huge combined robot with a bazooka on its shoulder, and I'm never going to say no to that. It does frustrate me a little that we had the beginnings of like a very Chisei-focused episode that perhaps would dive deeper into her backstory and her characterization, and then it sort of goes in another direction. And that's not a criticism, because obviously, like I said, I like where it goes, but my hope is that we do get more of that, because what we saw was interesting and a little ambiguous.
My hope is that with Yume and Yomogi's subplot not reaching a conclusion, but very much like clearly like starting to like reach its denouement, I do hope, like, look, I don't think, just for better or worse, because of like the realities of storytelling and pacing, I don't think Koyomi and Chisei are going to get as much development as Yume and Yomogi, but I do hope they get at least like one more episode of focus, because I do think that like I don't even think Koyomi's story is like concluded yet. Like, he still has underlying trauma to work through.
There's more trauma there than you would find from just finding a big bag of money.
Right, exactly. There is more to that. We are not done there. So I do hope that gets that continues to develop. But I will say, related to that, one moment I really loved in this episode that is almost like Dynazenon taking advantage of its truncated pacing is that Chisei shows up with her kaiju, and it's like, this kaiju wants to help us. And Gama's like, what the hell? And Koyomi's like, if Chisei says that kaiju wants to help us, I'm going to trust her. Yeah, and Gama's just like, yeah, you're right. She's our friend. Yeah. And it's like, you just know the version of this that is like 52 episodes.
Yes, there's like an entire plot arc about how, can we trust her judgment on this call?
Right,
and stuff
right.
That.
And it would have been like really agonizing to watch because we know where it's going. Yeah. They have to go through the motions. But because this thing's only 13 episodes, we don't have time for that. So, hey, Chisei shows up with a new power-up, and because we're good friends, we trust her, and we're going to, rely on her. And it's just like, that's awesome. Like, that's a great use of your shorter pacing to create something that's more emotionally fulfilling.
And it's just the show's just overall, the way they managed to be positive, uplifting, and not like in a patronizing, like naive sort of way, but like legitimately just, I talked about last time.
It's not
just depictions of human empathy. Like,
it's not
we don't
sickly
get all the time.
Or overly sentimental or stuff. It's a little corny, like we said, because that's the style that they're telling. But it's endearing, And again, it's because they've done the work to make us like these characters. And, we see that somebody like Yomogi, is an idiot who doesn't know how to talk to girls, but his heart is in the right place,
right.
and that means that like we want them to have the emotional payoffs that we get at the end of episode 9, which is again straight out of cliche but works surprisingly well.
Yeah. I guess do we want to, like, as we're closing up on her, do we want to quickly speculate where we think like the show is going? Like,
so we have we kind of end. So all the kaiju eugenicists have had a shot at this point, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And they mentioned at the end of one of the episodes how there's not an unlimited amount of kaiju to work with. So
right.
We must be drawing on some kind of conclusion. So,
I mean, is the natural escalation here is that the kaiju eugenicists have seen the humans win by combining their robots.
Yes.
So they arrive at the natural conclusion of, well, what if we all 4 of us controlled one kaiju at the same time or something?
I feel like they are going to cut someone loose, and I think it's going to be Yuga.
Is that the one with the glasses?
Yes, the dude who we thought was main dude who turned
right.
He,
the
totally
one who was framed as the leader, but is kind of actually the least interesting of the 4.
And I think that's deliberate. Like like he's kind of a stick in the mud, and I feel like there's going to be some internal conflict there at the very least. Especially.
I mean, we still have. Sorry, go ahead.
Especially, because you've got Mujino and Onija now as like a power couple, and Suzumu has always kind of been, the weird
one. In charge.
Yeah, the one who is actually in charge.
And I don't know how much to, like, this could be just me looking too deep into it, but Suzumu saying real kaiju eugenicists don't sleep.
Oh no, that's important, I think.
Everybody else, like, fucking conked out.
I will point out as well, in the original show, Alexis Kerib said real humans don't sleep.
Okay, I didn't know. All right.
That could be nothing, but it did happen.
I feel like Amamiya is so obsessive about these details that he does not do these things on accident like they are.
But, like, for example, the scene where they're all goofing off in the arcade and, like, they wake up, Suzumu has noticed, like, is not waking up. He has been awake all along, and the other three have not. So,
shout out to them going to
round one.
Oh,
round one.
The scene where they're on the hoverboards is so good. Like,
it's very good.
I don't. I'm still a bit concerned because we talked about last time about the Genesis not being as satisfying a villain. I'm not sure where that conflict getting resolved ends up being a big enough climax for all this.
I think,
I don't know.
My opinion is I don't necessarily think that this will, pull all those threads together in the same way that Gridman did. I think this is definitely a show that has been more about, from the beginning, it's been a show that has been more about an ensemble cast and how they've interacted.
Sure.
Not that Gridman didn't have an ensemble, but it was very clearly, Yuta and Rika's story for the most part. And
because I feel like the cast and moment to moment, I've enjoyed Dynazenon more than Gridman, but I don't know how they're going to top the ending.
Right. The Gridman ending is terrific.
Yeah.
That's going to be real difficult.
Arrow, were you going to say something before?
I think there's a possibility that you said they might cut off one of the eugenicists. I think maybe they might when you said that, my mind went to they turn him into a kaiju.
Always possible,
because then that would also potentially lead into them kidnapping Galma and turn him into a kaiju.
Okay.
That has to be fought.
I
with,
don't think
the power
that's
of
impossible.
friendship.
Yeah.
Because they've implied that they're going to run out of kaiju.
Okay.
No, I said I don't think that's impossible.
I can see that being a really interesting dark turn, right? If you need to ramp up the kaiju eugenicists as villains, just turning on one of their own and turning them into.
There was a lot of exposition about how kaiju are born from people's feelings. So they seem to be emphasizing that. The other option, which I think is also possible, because the kaiju eugenicists have been portrayed fairly sympathetically up to this point, is that we get an out of context big bad who appears out of nowhere. We still don't know who scattered those kaiju pearls.
That's still in play. I think. I mean, here's the thing. I think an outside context villain will show up. It's just how satisfying will it be?
The longer they wait on that, the harder it's going to be to pull off.
Look, Alexis Kerr wasn't prominent in the plot, but he was literally there since episode 1,
yeah,
right?
And
so you knew he was a factor, but this time we don't really have that. So
we learned that he enjoys Chinese.
Yes,
which is a very good scene. There's a couple of things I would say to that. Firstly, if you asked me what's more likely, that the kaiju eugenicists will be the villains, or that they'll join the good guys, I would still say that it's more likely they would join the good guys than be the ultimate villains. Yeah. Secondly, the one of the ways you could do an outside context villain who works by only showing up at the very end is, of course, if they are a character from Gridman.
So Alexis Kerr just shows up again.
It's possible,
my plans here haven't been going so well. Time for me to step in.
They did establish in that show that he is completely immortal. So
right.
What
the fuck is that slacker Gridman doing?
Well, that was going to be my next point, which is what is our over under on Gridman showing up for a cameo at least. I think he might show up for a brief cameo. At the very end.
At most you see him in the distance somewhere.
Yeah, something like that.
I don't think he's going to come in and kick the monster in the face while they're down or something.
Maybe he shows up during the post-credits live-action segment.
You can't do that trick twice, unfortunately.
What if Koyomi's old girlfriend is the actual villain this whole time?
Oh, what, Inamoto?
I have not had enough confidence to voice that, but there's a part of my brain that keeps thinking there has to be more to this character, right?
Because that's still hanging out there. That's one of the loose threads.
What did she do with all that cash?
She apparently bought a bunch of kaiju pearls off the darknet.
Yeah.
We still have to have a scene with her, Yomogi, and Koyomi in the same room, I think.
I think
that hasn't happened yet.
I think that the thing is, though, I'm not worried about these problems. I'm excited to see what they will do with them.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Because I have faith. and again, I'm not expecting every tiny plot thread to be tied up. I think the show is far too broad stroked for that, and I think it's perfectly willing to acknowledge that sometimes, you can throw things out and they don't necessarily matter. But I'm excited to see, what they will do to try and bring this story to a climax, and I think that's the important thing there.
Yeah. Totally random side note as I'm looking at Wikipedia, I did not realize Koyomi was supposed to be 33 years old.
They mentioned he's like 30-something.
Yeah, they do establish quite
clearly. I know he did say the one bit where he tells Gamma, I'm technically probably older than you.
Yes.
Even though Gamma's 5,000 years old or whatever, as far as their physical body or whatever you want to call it, he's like, I'm technically
it's an interesting element, right? Because, Koyomi is a little, mentally and emotionally he comes off as younger than he actually is, right? Some of that
he's neat, also right? It's anime and he is surrounded by characters who are teenagers, so
yes.
Right.
I just automatically assume that nobody is over 30 in anime, so that was
I know, right?
Interesting.
But I think, as we said earlier, I think there is more to come from Koyomi, and
for sure.
I will point out as well that when in that scene where he gets drunk with Mujino, he does mention that at one point he says at one point, I had money, I had so much money. Well, now we know where that money might have come from. So
yeah, that is true.
Let's see how that goes, shall we?
Man, what an interesting show.
Yeah, still some loose ends that are very interesting. Yep.
What a good season.
What a good season.
What a season, what a season.
We'll be back at least one more time to wrap these shows up. So
indeed.
That'll do it for this episode.
Quick plug, I am writing weekly episodic reviews for Gridman, so check them out if you would like to see some more detailed analysis and speculation.
Yes, for sure.
We have been trying to plug those so you can read that and anything else we put up at theglorioblog.com. We'll do the rest of our housekeeping while we're here. Follow us on Twitter at theglorioblog. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, Stitcher, and also on YouTube. At this point, can I just say find us wherever you find podcasts? I feel like we're
probably.
Do we have an RSS feed?
We do. That's also on there. But
that is still the way I subscribe to podcasts because I'm old.
Well, yeah, most people, I don't know what most people do at this point, but it's all there. You can subscribe.
You can find it. I know you can. I believe in you.
Yes. Or you could just follow with the link on the Glorio blog or something, whatever. All right. So that'll do it. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, and we'll catch everybody next time.
Peace.